Hi, I'm Chip Griffin here with another episode of Interadvocacy TV, and my guest today is Jeff Mascott. Jeff is the managing partner of Adfero Group, which is a public relations firm based in Washington, D.C. They really tie together digital and traditional communications on behalf of their clients, and they've recently come out with something called the Adfero Eight, and so we're going to talk to Jeff and find out more about it. Thanks for being with me, Jeff. Can you tell me a little bit about the Adfero Eight?
Sure, absolutely. You know, earlier last year, we as a company just kept reflecting on the fact that the world that we're operating in is just changing more and more rapidly every year. And there are so many technological innovations going on that it seems like, every year, even every month, there are changes to the way that we communicate. There's changes to the way that we work with clients. And so we felt like that it would be a very useful practice for us to go through and a useful product for us to produce that would be a list of some of the major trends that we saw happening. Because there's just so many changes going on, we just thought it would be very helpful for us to condense those into something that would be helpful for communicators and helpful for our clients to be aware of and to figure out how to integrate into their communication strategies.
Right. Now, this is something that's pretty common for communicators to do on their blogs, is to put out, what are the trend predictions for the year, that sort of thing. But you did it in a different way, both in terms of timing as well as style, and I'd like you to talk about that for a moment.
Sure, absolutely. Well, the first thing we did is we actually came up with the Adfero 8, and we came up with a list of 8, as opposed to typically what's done with a list of 10, or lately the list of 5 really has. 5 is the most popular thing right now, but we came up with a list of 8 because when we really thought through how we wanted to approach creating the list, 8 just seemed like it would be kind of not too cold, not too hot, but just right for our purposes. Mm-hmm. But yes, when we released it, we also thought that when we release this list every year, that the design of the logo of Adfero 8 and the design of the website or how we released it, we wanted to be as well up to date with whatever the latest trends were. Mm-hmm. So in this particular case, when we launched it in the form of a microsite, the site was reflected a lot of the design trends at the moment. And so we actually first and foremost designed it first for mobile, and we wanted the experience of the website to be particularly good for mobile. But we also wanted the experience to be unified, so it really didn't matter whether you were viewing it on a phone or viewing it on a tablet or even at your desktop. We wanted the experience to work pretty much exactly the same for all 3 devices. So it's highly responsive, and it works seamlessly across any platform.
Mm-hmm. Now, how did you come up with this list of 8? Is this something that you just kind of sat in your basement one night and came up with the first 8 things that came to mind, or what was the process?
That's a really good question. First of all, this was something that was really generated by first and foremost, by a team of people on our staff. And, I happen to work with some really exceptional people. And so I had certainly a small role, but really we had a wonderful team of people on our staff who led this effort. And when we came up with the 8, we wanted it to be not just simply our staff who came up with the list, but we wanted it to be a really collaborative process with friends of the firm and clients, etc. So it took place over the course of a number of months. It included a lot of informal conversations that our staff had with clients, over lunch or at the end of a client meeting, asking them what kind of trends are you seeing, and what are some of the noteworthy things that you've been reading about, or so on and so forth. And then we actually as well had a dinner a few months ago where we brought in a couple dozen of friends of the firm, clients, etc., and we had roundtable discussions that were facilitated. And sort of thinking through what are the trends people are seeing, and it was a real collaborative discussion. And so those conversations really set the table for then narrowing down the list and coming up with the final 8.
Mm-hmm. And when you came up with trends, I like the fact that you didn't do trends sort of in the typical sense where it talks about more tools and platforms. I mean, you went with some really big picture things. You went with one individual person. I mean, it was really a mixture of things that you identified.
Yeah, what we tried to do was not do the typical thing like you mentioned, and just simply come up with the latest widget or the latest platform or software or what have you. What we actually tried to do is to come up with what are the trends, or who are the people, the trends, etc. that we're sort of behind the typical strategies or tactics that you might employ. So we tried to go a little bit outside of the tactical, and really think, what are the things behind it that are driving the kind of tactics that you might use. And we wanted to come up with things as well that weren't things that people might have already thought about. And we tried to really diversify. But I don't think we would have been able to come up with a list like we did if it was just one or two people sitting around and thinking of it. I think part of the diversity of things that we came up with on the list was the result of having many conversations with many different people in a very collaborative process.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things you did too is you didn't just put the list out there. You talked about the responsive website, but I mean you also have interactivity in the website where
Yes.
each visitor is able to rank them, and talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we wanted to do was, and again, taking advantage of some of the latest trends with interactive and social, we wanted to give the user some kind of experience where they could rank the trends, and based on how they rank it, create then a profile. And I think there's probably 4 or 5 different potential profiles depending on how you rank the list, as a way to somewhat categorize things, but also allow people an opportunity then to be able to share that on via social with Facebook and Twitter and so on and so forth. So it also helps generate some publicity. And the way it works actually is that we created 4 or 5 different profiles based on like exact rankings of a list, and then depending on how you rank it, there's some algorithm that determines which profile you best match up with.
Right. Yeah, I know. For me, it came up with realist. I think maybe the better term would be curmudgeon, but it worked. I mean, it seemed accurate enough, at least as far as I would assess myself.
Well, we probably, Chip, I think we probably have pretty similar personalities, and I ended up with a realist as well. And I think that actually produced some chuckles around our office, because I'm not sure if I would be a realist, but it's an opportunity to kind of learn, to learn.
Sure.
I'm sure we did not use any kind of scientific method in coming up with the personality types. It was more kind of a fun thing. So
yeah,
it's interesting we came up with the same one though.
Exactly. So now, I mean, what are some of your favorites from this list that really stick out to you from those 8?
Well, one of them in particular is actually the Predator. And this actually was generated out of a lunch with a friend of the firm. And we were talking about something completely different. And she was mentioning that one of the positions that they were hiring for at her organization was the position of Predator. And so it just spurred on a whole conversation about how we're really creating a completely new kind of categories of how of the kinds of individuals that we are hiring. And I would say also as well, it's something that our firm is really having a lot of discussions around, because we had originally when we started the firm a couple of years ago, really were in the practice of hiring generalists, and we built a team primarily of people who were really good at lots of different things. But it seems though that with what our clients are looking for, that we're we're now much more in the business of hiring specialists, and specialists in different kinds of categories than we might be hiring specialists for even just a few years ago.
Right.
So we just thought that term in particular was a good, term that represented what we think is a big trend in the industry.
And just take 30 seconds to explain what a predator is, because since we're speaking this, they can't see that it's not spelled like predator, like I'm coming after you.
That's right. It's not like you're coming after me. It's not like a drone. That's a great question, Chip. A predator is someone who is really skilled at both producing multimedia content like a video, but also is really good at sitting down and editing it as well. So somebody who can kind of produce something from start to finish. They can go out. They can say, all right, there's a scene that we need. There's something that we need to capture on video. I'm gonna think through how that final video might look like. I'm gonna go and I'm gonna capture and shoot all of the various scenes. I'm gonna sit down right after I'm done, and I'm gonna put the whole thing together, package it up, and have it for a final product. So it's a specialist, but it's also somebody who gets lots of the different parts of producing something. Right. It actually, interestingly, that particular term originated out of reality television, because reality television required predators to be able to work on the set with whatever they were shooting, and capture it, produce it, and put together a package very quickly.
Yeah. One of the things I really like about that is, and it sort of goes with my I'm old school, even though I'm a digital guy. It really harkens back to the old days of the small market TV or especially radio reporter who really had to do all of those things. You didn't have a whole team of people going out and doing it. I remember when I was at city council meetings, when I was a kid, you'd have the reporter there. He had his cassette. He would ask the questions. He would go back. He would edit it himself, put it on the air. Those are the kinds of things that we're now doing in digital, but really have been done for a long time in other forms of media.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Now, how will we know whether you were right? I mean, can we come back 12 months from now and look and say, clear as day, you were right or wrong, or is this really more of a longer-term trends kind of look?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think probably a lot of what we're suggesting are more longer term. So we're coming up with a list in many ways that we think people should be aware of the trend. And yes, some will likely have an impact now. Some will likely have an impact into the future. And I'm sure many of them will be just flat out wrong. And I think that's okay. Mm-hmm. It's because there's so many things going on. It's helpful to be aware of lots of the key things that we think might shape the world, because even if some of them are wrong. And what we hope to do is really throughout the year go through the process of thinking about what did we miss and what's changing, and continue to do the same thing, continue to produce the same kind of lists each and every year.
Yeah. Well, as I always say to people, if I actually could tell you what the future held, I'd be in Vegas, not here talking to you.
Exactly.
But anyway, tell people where they can go, and I'll obviously include a link, but tell them where they can find the Adfero 8.
Sure, absolutely. So you can find it either through our website at adfero.com, but the website address for the microsite for the Adfero 8 microsite is just adfero8.com.
Fantastic. Thanks for joining me, Jeff.
Thanks for having me.